Hello, and a warm welcome to Peacemongers. My name is Eric, and with me I have my always amazing co-host Mehmet.
Thank you.
Hello,
What,
hello,
what, do,
Mehmet.
what do I say to that? You're the one who's amazing. Thank you, Eric.
No, no, no.
How are you?
And I'm doing fine. I'm doing great. Because today we have, it's our honor to have Benji Schoendorff as our guest. Welcome, Benji.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Mehmet and Eric. It's a pleasure to be on your show for sure.
The pleasure is ours. Thank you.
Yeah. Would you please just introduce yourself? Who are you? And present your work.
So I'm a clinical psychologist by day, based since October 2010 in the settler colony on Turtle Island, also known as Quebec, Canada. Before that, I don't know where to start, where you want me to start, but let's say I've been an anti-imperialist since September the 11th, 1973. So I was 10 at the time, and my uncle was a Vietnamese communist. So, I heard that it was a CIA operation, which I naively believed at the time. But, since then I've had the opportunity to learn that tankies were always right about everything and continue to be. But at the time, I didn't totally realize. So I became a Trotskyite of sorts in my late teens, and then really wanted to get into, revolutionary politics and journalism. And I went to study in Britain, and I started a magazine for the vanishingly small post-Trotskyite sect that I was a part of. One thing it had that a few others had a very strong orientation towards anti-colonial struggles, including armed struggles, was very close to the economic analysis of Samir Amin. And my main claim to fame, I think, was to recruit to the editorial collective of the magazine that I launched when in Britain, one Keir Starmer, Esquire, now Sir Keir Starmer, which I think is a testament to my absolutely piss poor political education abilities, right? or maybe, as I think in my most conversational days, maybe because in Britain is such a police state, always has been, that whenever there were, three people that were somewhat against the establishment meeting, at least one of them was a police informant.
They had the Keir Starmer available anytime.
It wasn't me. I know it wasn't me. So, but it wasn't just the two of us. We were almost 10. The biggest we ever became was around 30 in the general, circle of people interested. But anyway, I fell victim to two things. Number one is I'm autistic, and I didn't realize at the time, which makes me absolutely shitty at all the politicking that you need to do and all the social subtleties of, not talking too much, not saying the wrong thing at the wrong time to the wrong person. So I'm really bad at that. And but the other thing was just the triumph of neoliberalism following the fall of the Soviet Union, which naively I thought might be a good thing. Well, I didn't think this for long. And I think I suffered from a very serious case of political depression for a while, i.e. the inability to live with myself in a world in which I could see political possibilities, right? And so that kind of coincided with the unipolar moment, if you like, this moment of hubris, madness of imperialism, in which it believed, it projected, and many of us believed, especially in the West. I imagine that was it. It was the end of history in some sort of a sense, right? So that was very difficult for me to deal with, and eventually I went into clinical psychology as a way to do something useful, I think, also to understand, my own mental struggles. And so I became a clinical psychologist. And then I moved to Canada for love. So it was a time in my life where politics wasn't, I still had the same ideas, the same position, but I wasn't really thinking too much about these things. And I knew about the US being, of course, a genocidal settler colony, but I didn't look at Canada too closely, and, it wasn't too hard to think it would be the same thing. But, I kind of bought into the idea that it was some kind of a politer version of it. And so I found myself here. One thing that was very important to me, as I think I went as an 18-year-old to visit Beirut and PLO, and I met many, many PLO guys and some Psyops in there. And really, seeing Palestinian struggle and refugees and the Palestinian cause up close stayed with me forever. And gradually, as I made my life into this world as a fairly comfortable middle class, petit bourgeois, you'd say, clinical psychologist, the settler colonists in the Zionist colony, kept on reminding me something was wrong and doing all those mowing the lawn operations. And when they finally moved from genocide to Holocaust after the glorious resistance operation of October the 7th, the great Tufan al-Aqsa, which I think will remain in the annals of anti-colonial struggles as one of the most impressive operations. Then I suddenly felt in my heart that I needed to speak up. I needed to do something, and I needed to do it for my son in a strange way. My son personally, but also kind of, so that he could have a life in which he can look back and answer the question. So how, so my parents knew about it, and this is what he did. So that's kind of a long introduction to my story. And I've been studying very deeply an approach to psychology, which comes out of the behavioral tradition, which made me an enemy of Chomsky even before I considered this politics. And for the past 5 or 6 years, it kept coming up to my mind that this approach was actually the closest you could get to a scientifically based dialectical materialist approach to psychology. And so, I've been mulling this idea, and as the flood cleared a little bit, what was really important to me, washed a lot of things, I've been starting to really put down some of those ideas, which now inform both what I write when I'm not spending all my time on podcasts or Twitter, which I think is just some kind of a conspiracy to stop me writing this thing, and the way I look at my clinical practice, the way I look at the way we function in the world, and the way I look at how we can build a new revolutionary anti-imperialist class consciousness to stop that accelerating train towards complete destruction of life on the planet, which is actually the inner logic of capitalist imperialism. So that's the short version of my answer to your question.
Thank you. And now for the long version. Thank you very much.
Go and get another cup of coffee.
But so you've started Resistance is Fertile as like a...
Oh, I forgot to mention that.
Yes, but like an umbrella of podcasts. I mean, they're all under the same name, but you have different types of episodes. You have a live stream. Is it every week or?
Yeah, at the moment it's every week. Monday morning here, on Eastern time, 9:30 a.m. with my co-host Indika, who's based in Sri Lanka. I don't know what time it is for him there, but somewhere in the afternoon, like 6:30 or something like that. And we started. So what happened is, I started speaking up in the International Psychological Association I was a member of. Actually, I started speaking up in reaction to the Zionists who literally after 7th of October started pushing atrocity propaganda onto our association and even demanding that the association endorse Zionism. So I started, going, hey, folks, wait a minute. And eventually I started speaking up about genocide, especially because that association was funded in 2006 as a way to better deal with the humanization that had followed the fake 9/11, right? And suddenly the association had nothing to say about the dehumanization that was used in order to legitimize the acceleration of the genocide and the complete destruction of Gaza and the Holocaust that was accelerating there. So, and as I spoke up, a few people did speak up also, but mostly we got shut down. And that's how I, got closer to Sasha. We had met in person like 10 years ago or something, but suddenly, we realized that we were feeling very strongly about those things. And after some months of trying to get this association to listen to basic humanity and being completely ineffective in that, I one day, turned to Sasha and I said, you know what, I think, how about we start a podcast and we start talking about these things. So that's how we started. We actually approached this colleague who had left the association, who was a Palestinian psychoanalyst based in New York, but she didn't want to be too public, so she suggested a friend, Nuncha, and then we started working with Nuncha. And we had a principle when we started, is that we could say whatever we wanted, we could talk about whatever we wanted. We could invite the co-host, but nobody could say, no, you can't speak about that, or you can't do this, or you can't do that. So that's how we started. And as we started, well, I realized I also wanted to talk about, this new form of psychology that I'm evolving or developing or whatever. And then I wanted to invite people because a lot of those people that I invited were people that had been inspiring to me. And, it's absolutely great. It makes me think further to also have those conversations. And so that's how the Cyclip series was born, where we have guests. And then I had the series about my ideas about psychology. It's called SciMat. And then, I thought, well, I'm super interested in China. My son is interested. Maybe he wants to go and study there. My hope is to escape. I want to stop living in this fucking Nazi nightmare in the Fourth Reich. So I'm thinking, hey, China might be good. And I'm becoming more interested in China. I'm learning Chinese. I'm, cleaning all my Trotskyite come CIA. I don't think there's any difference. Preconceptions I had about China. And so I also started a new series, which is called Open Mind on China, where I explore, what is China really like on all sorts of levels. And yeah, so that's how it got to where it got to. Maybe next week I'll start being interested in something and it'll be a new series.
You're really leveraging your, I don't know if you would call it ADHD, or is it part of autism that you have like diverging interests, but they're all interrelated?
Yeah, I think they're all the same, but yeah, I would call it autism, yeah. But or just, being interested in stuff.
And then you got kicked out of YouTube, right?
Yeah, well, that's really, it's really strange. I believe it's my old comrade Keir Starmer, because I had this very small channel, this very small personal channel, where I started putting out a few videos like from November 23 to February 24, talking about Palestine, but really still trying to talk to liberals, and therefore liberal Zionists, and therefore fascists, right? So I was very careful and And so there was nothing there that was really like, everything I put out on this personal channel was milder than anything I've said after this on Resistance is Fertile, right? And then I was invited to give a conference about my time running this magazine with Keir Starmer for some historical society in Britain, and I put a video of this on my channel. And then this guy who runs a fairly well seen, big audience leftist channel in Britain called Crispin Flintoff invited me to talk about Keir Starmer. And so we did the interview, and then he put out this teaser of 30 seconds. And 5 minutes later, I was watching something on YouTube and the channel came down, right? So I don't know. I'm not saying I know. I'm not saying I watched a few Candace Owens videos. Now I can say, I'm not saying I know, but I know. And no.
I mean, I haven't seen those videos, but I believe that was a great impersonation.
And anyway, yeah. And then later on, just when I was trying, I created another channel where so they said repeated hate speech. They never told me anything about what the hate speech was. The channel had 200 subscribers, nothing. And so I opened another channel because I was starting to talk about psychology in French on that channel, and I wanted to continue that. And they shut that one down. But those fuckers, they keep on taking your YouTube Prime subscription, which I subscribe to because I'm allergic to advertising. But you can't cancel it because you don't have your account anymore, right? So I'm thinking, well, it's okay. They will have canceled it anyway. No. A few months later, I realized they're still charging me for so I contacted them and I said, can you please stop it and refund me? And when I got to the second channel, they made the connection, and 15 minutes later, they had shut down Resistance is Fertile. So it's actually not got anything to do with what we said on Resistance is Fertile. Is they have this strange thing on YouTube where they ban the person, right? So I am banned on YouTube because I'm...
You're poisonous.
Yeah, I'm not a peacemonger, by the way. Maybe I'm on the wrong channel because according to YouTube, I am a persistent, repeated hate speech monger. And so that's
we do believe peace is worth fighting for. So
and Mehmet is blocked on Instagram as well. So
I mean that's quite a different story though.
Bright future.
Like on my case, it was definitely about Iran, because I've been saying quite far out stuff according to meta community guidelines probably about Palestine, but nothing happened. And then suddenly when I started talking about Iran, they were like, no, we're not having that here right now. We're preparing an attack, so shut the fuck down. That's what happened to me. But it's great that we have started with the conspiracy side of things. because we live.
It was a conspiracy 6 months ago, but now it's in the Epstein paper.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is what we're living in. So, like the constant stream of insane shit they are sort of, I don't know, bearing for us. And then at the same time, there is insane atrocity propaganda going on about Iran. Like today, I've seen people literally talking about R2P, the what was it called? Responsibility to protect, exactly. Which was used to destroy Libya. I mean, like, get a fucking grip. But that's what they're talking about right now. Literally, Iranian influencers are making posts on Instagram and whatever place.
But on the other hand, Mehmet, I think 23 million Iranians were forced at gunpoint to go out in the streets today to celebrate the Iranian revolution.
I've also heard
there is a responsibility to protect, for sure.
I've also heard that it was free sandwiches. One of those. That's a lot of sandwiches.
It's a good job. It's a good job. They've almost reached food self-sufficiency. That's how you know.
Exactly.
This crazy idea that you can get millions of people in the street through coercion.
It's insane.
beyond ridiculous.
It's bonkers. But so for people who don't know, because it won't be reported, obviously, today was the Islamic Republic's anniversary, 47th, and literally between 25 to 30 million people were out on the streets today. I mean,
in every city, every town,
everywhere, exactly. In only in Tehran it was like 3 million people. Insane numbers. I mean, you can't take anyone out in that sort of proportion. It's like it's almost a fourth. Not almost. It's a fourth of the country on the streets, sort of defending their sovereignty.
That's huge.
That's not. I mean, you can't ever see that in any Western country. That's not going to happen.
The propaganda tries to say to us like it's forced, or as you say, sandwiches or gunpoint
or AI.
But we can't even control a classroom of people. It's the Chinese and Iranians. They have some magic that lets them control people.
I mean, everybody knows the Swiss can't do a sandwich to
True.
Yeah, it's the food crap. That's true. Yeah. But I mean, like,
have a sack of potatoes.
You can't get millions of people coming down in the street with rotten fish.
Exactly. Right? I was just thinking about that. Yeah. I mean, but like, it's the
we have to talk about this rotten fish story someday.
we should have that on the, what do you call them? Take outs or whatever you call them. Yeah. Anyways, but at the same time, we have the same shit about Venezuela. Like, constant stream of crap. I mean, it's crap. Like, today, it was like, oh, Venezuela has started selling oil to Israel. Says who?
According to Bloomberg.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, and then you just scratch the surface and it's like, well, actually, the stolen oil has been sent by the American companies to Israel. It's like, I mean,
well, one thing about Iran, if I may say, Iran. One thing, one day I realized that Iran was actually the biggest ever mass revolution in the recorded history of humanity. You had literally millions of people coming out in the street to get rid of the Shah's government.
Yeah.
In masses that didn't happen for the French Revolution, didn't happen with the American, that wasn't a revolution anyway, and didn't happen with the October Revolution either, or for that matter, the Chinese Revolution, which worked somewhat differently. But having millions coming out in the street and overthrowing tyranny in that way is very unique to Iran.
And it's not talked about either, like how that culminated. Like, it was a year of constant protests. Every day, thousands of people out there. I mean, facing brutal oppression, but they didn't stop. And
non-violent also, not attacking police stations, not attacking libraries.
Yeah. It was only
hospitals
only at the very end, if I understand correctly, when there was actual systematic turbulence, because there was a shift. And then someone had to take the power. That's when they got the permission from Khomeini that they can actually now get the guns and create order. But if people don't understand this, they should go see the videos from Khomeini's funeral. There is video where they bring down the casket and then people sort of jump on it to just kiss it and pay their respects in their own way. They have to just pull people away, and then they couldn't do the funeral that day, so they had to pull the casket and then had to put it in a metal container. And even so, it was a lot of people just jumping on the stage or altar, whatever you would call that. So that was 3 million people
and the
as
funerals of martyr Qasem Soleimani also were
millions of
people.
Yeah. I mean, literal millions of people. Exactly. But I mean, it's the revolution was couped by the Islamists. No, I mean, I don't know which fantasy you're living in, and I mean, there has been repression afterwards and purges against Marxists all of that happened, absolutely. And sure, like make whatever you make out of it, but that's the idea that the revolution was a leftist revolution or some other people's revolution than Islamists, and then suddenly Khomeini said, it's now mine. That's not what happened. I mean, people have to just accept this fact and act accordingly. Whatever they want to achieve, they should start with the facts. But coming back to facts versus conspiracies, or all of this universe that we're living in, which is extremely curated, what we learn and the news, what is not reported, what is reported, what is called a conspiracy theory, what is not. Like, how do we make sense out of this without going crazy?
It's a good question. I think so. It kind of relates back to my to my way of looking at psychology, which really is inspired from an approach that was first developed for clinical psychology. But it's about how we come to evolve the meaning of who we are in relation to ourselves and in relation to others, right? And most people I have what they call a selection bias, because most people who come and see me, they live inside what I call a system of meaning, in which they are at some fundamental level less worthy than others. And you also have the people who live inside systems of meaning, inside of which they are at some fundamental level more worthy than others, but those generally don't come and pay me good money to step out of their delusion. They become police people, they become CEOs, they become managers of the genocidal empire and what have you.
Less and more according to themselves?
Than others, you see, less worthy in terms of fundamental human worth and dignity. And that is actually the source of much mental suffering, right? And so as we grow up and we learn to relate things with one another, eventually, we get into that activity of relating things automatically, often outside of awareness, but it organizes around two poles. One is the meaning of who I am in relation to my stuff, my thoughts, my emotions, my personal history, my memories, and my actions in the world. And another one is who I am in relation to others, right? And so you have these two poles, and the capitalist, imperialist, white supremacist plague that has been ravaging the planet for the past 500 years has co-evolved with systems of meanings that are supremacist, because they legitimize exploitation, they legitimize oppression of others on all sorts of levels. You see, if brown people are not as intelligent or as worthy as us, not as human as us at the end of the day, right? If you're not as worthy as other human, you're less human than others, then we can do whatever we do to them because they are less than us. And the problem with this, of course, is the way I look at the emergence of consciousness and systems of meaning is there is a dialectic between recognizing myself in the eyes of another person, suddenly relating, oh, I'm the same as this other human trying to speak to me as I'm a baby, right? And at the same time, I'm different. So I'm me, but I'm like the others. So there's always this tension between those two poles. And I think you're healthy psychologically when you can hold together, okay, I am different, but I am no better nor worse than anyone else, right? And this is a pretty hard balance to hold if you're living in a society which actually has a vested interest in getting you to believe that you're either less than others as an individual and that as a group you are more than others that you will go and oppress. On the other side, this is what Franz Fanon called the colonizer mind and the colonized mind. On the other side, well, they are better than us, they have better technology, they have better democracy, better Hollywood films, and better Epsteins than we do, so they are superior and we should suck up to them. And so I forget what the question was, but it was really interesting and I hope I kind of answered it.
Do you want me to? No, you haven't.
I was setting the groundwork. So what was the question?
So the question is, how do we resist and inoculate ourselves against the psyop world?
Yes. So I think we really need to get to the level where we go, there's something inhuman going out there. I don't agree to live in a world in which some humans are less human than others, right? I don't agree to live in a world in which I am told the preservation of civilization requires a 4K live stream genocide. I just refuse that, right? When you do that, you're connecting to the other side of the dialectic that says, well, we're actually the same in terms of fundamental human worth, right? So you need that anchor point. Once you have that anchor point, it gives you something inside yourself, but it's also relating to others, right? In terms of who I am in relation to others, I am the same in terms of fundamental human worth, even though I'm different. That gives you the basis from which you are going to resist the psyops. And yeah, that would be my answer.
Thank you.
So the psyops is anything that tells you that others are lesser than you, or now there is a higher form of psyop, which you see mostly in Venezuela, but a little bit elsewhere, which is everybody is corruptible, like our capitalist imperialist world is corrupt and built on corruption, right? So you have all these narratives from the beginning of the operation in Venezuela, which is those betrayal narratives, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Delcy Rodriguez betrayed Maduro and sold him out down the river. And you see those narratives being pushed by who? The empire, right? Again and again and again. And you see, unfortunately, people on our side falling for them and going, yes, they have betrayed. And again, yesterday when there was this ridiculous story that Venezuela was openly selling oil to Israel, then you had many people on social media going, that's it, it's disgusting, they have betrayed. But of course they haven't.
That I saw that like tweet or article, and then Telesur wrote about it being fake news, and having that as a fake story really, what to say,
coordinated.
Really, yeah. But what does it say about Israel? Like, as a fake news, it really.
I mean, but it's their role, right? They have many roles, and I mean, it's more about what that does to Venezuela. But you mean the association being associated with Israel?
The fake news of being associated with Israel really, like, they know Israel is this hated subject, right?
They do. But I mean,
so it's
go ahead, Benji. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that dimension. It's quite interesting. The way I looked at it up until now is it's a sign of utter submission, of course, because, Venezuela is one of the countries that has been strongest and most vocal in its support for Palestinian resistance, and not just Palestinian resistance, for Hezbollah, for the axis of resistance. They openly support them, right? So that would be, to me, that would be symbolically a sign of total surrender. 2 months ago, you had murals of Nasrallah and Khamenei and Maduro, and now you're selling petrol to Israel. But to go back to your question, Mehmet, how do we protect ourselves against the psyops? Well, once we realize that we are not, I'm talking for us Westoids, especially of the white persuasion, right? Because it's not a biological race, it's an ideology that we've been grown into, right? And whose boundaries changes over time according to the necessities of the moment, is to, once we realize that we are not actually superior, we're not the bearers of the superior philosophy, science, understanding of anything, then, but we are just as equal as others, and we need to learn from the people who have effectively resisted genocidal empire. And spoiler alert, it's not white people, right? It pains me because I would love it if my people were effective in, after all those tens of thousands of books on Marxism that white people wrote, it's not been that effective. And so one way we protect against psyops is we go and learn at the feet of the people who have actually resisted this genocidal empire on the ground. And, I speak about it a great deal, but there is the work of martyr Basil Al-Araj from Palestine, who actually wrote about this stuff, right? And he wrote 8 rules. It's a very short text. We've discussed it on our podcast a few times. I've discussed it also on Adnan's podcast, and many others have discussed it. There's a great episode of Justin's anti-empire project on it also, which is how I first heard about it, if I'm honest. And one of those rules is never amplify the occupation's narratives, right? Wait until confirmation from the resistance before you amplify anything. And these are people who, on the ground, understood that war isn't just something you do with weapons and, material stuff like logistics, but it's something you do with systems of meaning. And war is about, politically speaking, is about convincing the other side that resistance is futile, that there is no way you can live a different life. So stop being stupid and submit to whatever, including your own destruction, because there is no alternative. This is really, it's no accident that Thatcher was one of the first ideologues of this new offensive of capital, coined the phrase, there is no alternative. There is no alternative. And so they are gunning for our minds in many ways, right? And every time, everything we say publicly actually is ammunition in the psychological war, whether we know it or not. There are no neutrals in there because their objective is to make it so that no one on this planet imagine that there is an alternative to the death and destruction project of all life and humanity that is actually the logic of capital. And so every time you're going to take them as a source for anything, you're actually gunning for them. But of course, inside, you probably think you're very smart and you're looking under the cards and you're not a fool and and you're cynical and you want to get there first. I called it first and all the rest of it, which is all nonsense.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Eric.
I was just about to bring up the 8 rules. I listened to that episode today where you read all the 8 rules, and me and Mehmet have talked about it before. And one of the rules is never spread the occupation's propaganda and do not contribute instilling a sense of defeat.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
how do you think this?
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Mehmet.
I mean, I did because part of it, Benji already answered, but like, it makes me think about West Asia directly, like the countries there, the populations there, the different attitudes they have. Like, which is, I mean, at the same time, Venezuela, like, why does it matter so much that Venezuela and Cuba should be defeated from the empire's point of view? Because if they are defeated, then defeatism will set upon the entire continent of Latin America, or South America and Latin America. But the same thing goes for Iran. Like, if you look at Turkey, is a completely defeated country mentally. I mean, and I am from Turkey, so what I'm talking about is actually the mental state of whatever you call the intelligentsia, the people who sort of run the country, and also the people who have the brains around those people. All of that is defeated. Like, no one believes in the idea that you can actually defeat this fucking beast, that it's a spider web, as Nasrallah called it. No one believes it, other than Iran and the forces they have been cultivating. So it is imperative for the Western Empire, the empire, to defeat Iran.
Yeah.
Because it will create no bounds against this, what I call the pieification of entire West Asia. And that's what they want for the entire world.
Yeah.
Sorry, Eric.
But a country like it was beautiful, no problem. A country like Cuba is not. It's not that materially important, but it's very symbolically important.
The idea, exactly.
Yeah. And you see, I consider myself some kind of a Marxist, but we really need to step out of that Western philosophical delusion that, things are either material or mental, right? Consciousness arises dialectically out of material relations between people, but once it's there, it can then affect material stuff. And I think Marx wrote somewhere that, ideas start to have material power once the masses grab them. And Capital knows this. Capital knows this. The Capital didn't have to wait for Marx to write Capital to understand what he was doing and how to do it, right? And in the same way, Capital doesn't need to have a clear theory of psychology to understand that the way people look at the world, those systems of meaning they live inside of, are material, are absolutely crucial to the class struggle, to whether they will be able, this very small, vanishingly small minority will be able to continue to accumulate literally dead labor, to kill what is alive in this world, to turn it into dead stuff, or whether the living, the free people of the world, as our brothers and sisters in Gaza call them, will rise up and say, no, we don't want this stuff anymore, right? And that's why, since the turn of the 20th century, they have invested so much into psychology, mass manipulation. It started with Gustave Le Bon's Psychology of Crowds in 1890, and then continued with the work of Edward Bernays, one of Freud's nephews, and all the psychological work of, which is the main work of the CIA at the end of the day, since the end of the Second World War. And basically, what they are going against is anybody who has this pretension from their perspective to live inside a system of meaning that says, I can determine for myself, and we as a community can determine for ourselves the way we live. You over there are not going to impose on us how we are going to be human. At the end of the day, this is what is most threatening psychologically, but materially also, to the genocidal empire, right? So literally any group of 10 people in the world, it could be the WACO or whatever, or the MOVE group in, was it Philadelphia, who stand up and say, no, we're going to self-determine is a material threat to the empire, not material in the vulgar Marxist sense of the word that, the purchase of Cuba and world economy is, of course, nothing, but material in the sense that, hey, those guys, 66 years of the worst blockade ever on an island, they have better, life expectancy, lower childbirth rates, higher education. They send doctors all over the world. They have better even LGBTQ laws than anyone else in the world. That is what is threatening to them. And that is their problem with Iran. That is their problem with Yemen. That is their problem with the resistance in Lebanon, their problem with the resistance in Palestine, their problem with Vietnam, with China, with anyone, literally, who has the goal to say, well, thank you very much, but we are going to live our life our own way because we're just as human as you are. So that's, I think, what it is about. And this is why sovereignty has become such, the primary contradiction in the international class struggle today, in my personal perspective.
Yeah, thank you. Agreed.
Yeah.
Something that before I forget, you talk about worth, self-worth, like relational worth, maybe, and how to sort of balance it out somehow. And you call this like a dialectical psychology, but I'm a practicing Muslim, and from a Muslim perspective, that makes total sense, because because I've listened to you. I've listened to you with Adnan as well. You talked specifically about this topic, and then when I was listening, I was like, yeah, this is what we also believe in. Like, the whole story of humans becoming humans is the Creator, God, breathing into the form of the human, and then, which more or less means, and this is a bit of Sufism, that every human being has a part of God in themselves, and then you directly become correlated, and like your worth becomes the same as well at the same time, but also unique. So it's, yeah. Anyways, I just didn't want that connection to go to waste, but the dog didn't like that, so that's fine.
Yeah, no, the dog absolutely loves it, and he just thought he had nothing to add because it was so perfect. There is this thing that we again as Westerners have so much psychological work to do on ourselves, right? Because there is this idea that even from the perspective of Marxism, that Marx is the culmination of the whole of human thought and all the rest of it, whereas Marx, as I see it, is a very valiant and, ultimately, I hope that it will be successful attempt at banging on the very hard-headed idealist Westerners that, come off your stupid debates about idealism and materialism. It's not like this. Everything is changing all the time, and look at the relations and forget about the essence of this, that, or the other thing, and rejoin the rest of humanity, which has known this since forever and expresses it in all sorts of different ways. You shared the Sufi Muslim way, and then you go to China, they will put pretty much the same ideas, but in their Confucian or whatever way, and it doesn't matter. The general idea is, there is a contradiction between everything, or there are opposites in kind of everything, and that's what makes things change. Otherwise, they would never change. But Westerners one day thought they could decide what is one thing once and forever. Is it a thing or is it not a thing? And, Marx very generously tried to disabuse us of that notion, but we didn't listen. We went, oh, Marx, a white Western guy, is invented the ultimate apex of philosophy and everything, where in my view, all he was saying, philosophically speaking, right, is come off your stupid idealist horse at the end of the day and rejoin normal humanity, which has always been dealing with those contradictions that are not to be solved. It's not like the solution, which also you saw in beginning of Marxism and even the Russian Revolution, and Los Sordo is great on this, is not to go, okay, so we're not different, actually, we're all the same. And that's just as stupid, you know what I mean? Like, of course we're all different. It's just that this difference doesn't mean we are more or less worthy, that's all. And if we can recognize that we are all equally worthy, therefore equally worthy of self-determination, it can't be granted to you. You can just recognize, okay, you're human. So if you're human, you can be human your way, because, I can be human my way. And that's the end of the conversation in a way. But we have a political economy that actively works against this.
Capitalism always puts value on everything. So it's natural that thinking mirrors that and expresses in that way, and then we go out to the world and export that thinking and that system.
And in terms of mental health, the result is this, it inflates everything because that's how it extracts value. And every 10 years, you have a new version of the supposed, diagnostic, statistical, mental, whatever DSM thing, and it's 100 new syndromes every 10 years, right? I heard about a new one, which is burnout, home cooking burnout, right? So you get this special capitalist syndrome if you are convinced that home cooking is important to have a healthy family, but then you burn out because you can't, but basically at the end of the day, those are all illnesses that are created by capitalism, right? A lot of those things don't exist outside of this political economy in which everything has got to be more or less than anything else and everything and everyone else.
Yeah. Going back a little bit to defeatism and what you just said with in respect to the Soviet Union getting destroyed, that really inflicted a heavy defeatist sentiment, and Washington declared the end of history in very, just as you say, this strict definition of nothing will ever move from here and we can do what we want and we are better than everyone.
We won. That's the proof that we are better, right?
Yeah. Let's see. You mentioned you have sort of not your own or version, your dialectical version of psychology. The other day we were talking about ecology and environmentalism with Henry Hakemaki and Salvatore, and how science has been weaponized to or protected within empire, and gets going about all over the place in his imperial theory industry. So, as a psychologist, can you give us your critique of like Western psychology or standard psychology in the West? Since what is wrong with it, and how does it fit with capitalism?
So, I've got this great series on resistance fertile. It's called "What's Wrong with Western Psychology and How to Fix It." I'm 4 hours into it, or maybe more, and I'm still writing the 5th episode. Okay, it would be faster to talk about what isn't wrong with it, but it depends, what side look at it. One of the things that is wrong with it, one of the main things that is wrong with it on the theoretical level, it's basically mechanistic, right? It's basically an extension of Descartes' idea that we are automatons, and you just need, so like it's your brain is thinking, right? So if you are unhappy, it must be some kind of a brain disorder. And your brain, of course, in the times of Descartes, used to be like the high tech of the time. So those little automatons that rang the church bells, right, in rich cantons. And since the mid 20th century, it's been the computer, right? So your brain is a computer. And this, of course, is a metaphor, but they don't think beyond the metaphor, and they believe so much in that metaphor that they literally believe that because if the brain is a computer, we only need a lot of computing power, and then we'll create artificial generative intelligence. It's complete nonsense, of course, because a metaphor, everybody knows the map is not the territory, but a metaphor isn't even a map, right? It's an image that kind of helps us grope in the dark. So that's the main one of the big things that's wrong with it. But you see many, many things follow on from this. One of those things is the idea that if you change brain chemistry, you are going to actually change mental suffering, right? Another idea is if you change wrong ideas in the brain, like you would change pieces of code in a computer program, then you will actually make people happy again. And all these are part of what the problem is, right? But I think the main problem in terms of mental health is capitalism. I mean, like, we are expected as human beings who learn to become conscious by recognizing our common humanity and our difference in the eyes of another as we learn to relate and to speak, to live in a world in which you get 4K genocide, in which, I've known this as a little child, that there are people starving all over the world, that there are wars and all the rest of it. And we are supposed to live in this world where, other than this, we see we have the technology to pretty much live, in the way we would want to live, and be happy. That's completely ridiculous. And we are expected to live in this world also in which our labor is taken away from us, our labor time, and we are told to do stupid stuff. I think most of the work now in the West is complete bullshit jobs, right? Which is how and why people can watch our great podcasts at work, because nobody does anything other than wait until the time of the end of work, because everybody knows it's all bullshit at the end of the day. I'm being a little bit, caricatural. In my trainings, I like to make the contrast very clear, but that is what is wrong with psychology. And then as clinical psychologists, we are asked to basically fix people so that they can go back into this system happily, which is complete nonsense, okay, no, it's okay, you shouldn't. And we create this there's this new eco-anxiety, right? So there's this new syndrome also, eco-anxiety, for people who are unduly concerned about ecological destruction. I think the next one is going to be a genocidal anxiety. People who are overly concerned about genocide, 4K genocide on their handheld device. And then there will be a ISO anxiety, people who are overly concerned about the ICE, coming and snapping people out of their child's schools and all the rest of it. It's the whole thing is based on nonsense at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like also some passivity is built into it. Like Marx defines history as a class struggle. And the late comrade and actor Sven Wollter said that a life in struggle is a good life. And how could we see like the struggle? Because what you're talking about makes like struggle somehow unnatural and something that is dangerous or something we should avoid. But that's not what we want to get rid of, really, because struggle makes us human.
Yeah, I think so. And having said everything that I've said, I still see, in any fucked up society, one has to live, and you can live in more or less worthwhile ways, right? And so I'm a clinical psychologist. I still do things that I believe are worthwhile. What I do in my private clinical practice is I help people to dismantle their own systems of meaning that prescribe that they have less worth than others at a fundamental level, until such times as they get to the point where they realize that they can, at the individual level, self-determine, be whoever they are. That, of course, doesn't solve the problem that when they step out of therapy, they will still be facing that capitalist system, right? But you can still get some part of the way, because people will go, okay, they can become one of the free people of the world, if you like. And if you talk about being a free person of the world, then self-determination means also accepting the possibility that for some people in this world, not struggling is what they choose to do, right? That's also a rational choice to make. And I don't see the role of psychology to get everybody into the place of struggle. So if you let people self-determine, and I think that's what's very, very smart about the Chinese way, by the way, then you can't prescribe in advance, say, oh, well, only a life of struggle is worth fighting for, or only a life of accommodation with the system as it is worth fighting, is worth living, or only a life of looking after your family is worth living, or whatever. That is decisions that are not for any one of us to make, except when we make them for ourselves, if you know what I mean. So with that said, there is still a role for folks like me who help people get to that place, but never become colonial in the sense that I think to have a good life, you should value this, you should do that, you should fight against the genocide, or you should join ICE or whatever.
Yeah, thanks, Benji. Because, I get sort of the opposite view of like a liberal thinking that we shouldn't struggle, and this lazy, someone else should do it, or it's sort of individualistic, but also projects problems onto some other subjects. It's to be successful, or is to have someone else do your shit.
Yeah, the global mom. That is capitalism.
Yeah.
That's a really good question, Eric. One thing that shows up for me as I'm listening to you is we are living in this capitalist, genocidal, imperialist political economy. It's a world system, right? It spreads its tentacles over the whole world and over the psychology of each and every one of us, over our systems of meaning, right? And it prescribes that individuality, individualistic lives are where it's at. And so those kind of choices are going to be more frequent, right? But we can't solve that in individual therapy. We need to go to the other side of those systems of meaning, which are collective systems of meaning. And this is where the class struggle is really happening, if you know what I mean. Like the capital is working on that front, is occupying that battlefield, that psychological warfare battlefield, in extremely sophisticated ways, precisely to tell people there is no way to function in this world except looking after number one. That's the only thing you can hope to do. And even so, you have to watch out because we're always keeping an eye on you. And if you step out of line, we'll come down on you like a ton of bricks if you're lucky, and worse if you're not. And so it's our job to carry the can for a collective alternative. No, there is a possible future for humanity. We do this by first analyzing the general direction of the system, which is, what the work of people like Ali Kadri is doing so brilliantly. Look, actually, capital is not just, the problem with capital is not just that it's taking your labor and paying you chump change for it. It's not just that it's swindling your labor out of you. It's actually turning everything alive into dead stuff. So it will eventually kill life on the planet. Most people who are alive tend to be on the side of life simply because they are alive, Otherwise, they would not be alive anymore. And so when we can show that on this side is just a runaway train to extinction, it opens the space for some alternative. And on the other side, we need to start talking about, well, life can actually continue. People have equal value. People can self-determine. You can be, you have the right to decide how you live, and everybody else has the same right. And we can join together in that world in which we have the same right to live in whatever way we want. And I believe China is actually doing it in, imperfect ways, because every life is imperfect. That is the main thing about life. But I heard this saying that I absolutely love. I heard it last week, I think. Apparently it's a Chinese saying, and it says, an egg cracked from the outside is food, but cracked from the inside is a birth, right? And that gets to this idea of self-determination that can be forced from the outside, but is also inspiring. We want to create the conditions in which things can be cracked from the inside. So that's where we need to put our work, not to say, being individualistic is bad, but working for a potential collective alternative. And the fact that there are Cubas, that there are Venezuelans, that there are Iran, that there are Yemens, that there are Palestinians, that there are resistance in Lebanon and what have you, and Vietnam and China and Laos and Korea, the DPRK, are all elements of that. We can actually live in whatever way we want to live. It's possible. And why don't we take this as a collective project, as humanity, rather than just, careening down to absolute death, where the richest man in the world spends his evenings tweeting about how money doesn't make you happy, right?
Exactly.
Well, give it away, you lunatic.
Yeah, if only he could make his way to the Epstein Island, then he'd be finally happy. Sorry, yeah.
With all the money in the world, and still you don't get invited onto the island.
Exactly.
What was the point?
Yeah, exactly.
What was the point of even being alive, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But,
Thank you.
But that's another point, you see. I think, because I go back to a material analysis. One of the reasons I read this thing yesterday, and it was talking about Limonov was a Soviet dissident who actually left Soviet Russia in 1972, but wasn't feted as a major figure in the West, so actually got to live the real life that people live in the West. And he discovered that what the Communist Party was saying about life in the West was true. And all the things that they believed from listening to Radio Free Europe was propaganda. And he came back and basically he said, the Soviet Union collapsed. That's not the only reason, but in a way it is part of it. It collapsed because it believed the propaganda of the West about the West. It
Yeah.
collapsed because it believed that Dallas or Dynasty were actually documentaries about life in the US. It collapsed.
Everyone is an oil millionaire, and
but it is not completely crazy as an idea, because coming out of World War II, the US was the country that produced everything and did it better than everyone else, right? Like US cars, jeans, or whatever. Part of it was advertising, but part of it was a material reality of it, right? But that's gone. Now, who wants a US car? Who wants a German car when you can have a Chinese car for 1/3 of the price and so much better? And everything is going that way. But that is a material reality that is changing, the possibility of living differently in your life, right? Like the Russians thought they would live differently in this Hollywood way, but now the Chinese are playing a much subtler game. They're not into stories, they're not into this narcissistic way of talking a big game. But when you see their stuff these days, like, whoa, they actually have much better material products. They're dealing with material problems like the ecological crisis in a much better way, with poverty, with everything, with lifespans. Every single outcome is better there. And this is how the Western Empire is going to collapse psychologically, because they can't go, they look around and go, oh my God, these people in China are living better than we are, right? And so I forget what was the question.
I don't remember either, but the US being like, we're the greatest nation in the world, and you have homeless people everywhere, and
but
can't afford medical bills.
But they have Polymarket now, so
yes.
But this, I mean, from being in Cuba, this still exists in a way. Like the grass looks greener sometimes on the other side, and but doesn't mean like you just taking a boat over to the US, then you'll be welcome and end up on top just as you enter.
These things don't change overnight. Like, the Soviet Union didn't collapse in a day. But increasingly, like you see it in young people, they are really interested in China. My son wants to go and study in China. Why the hell? Why doesn't he want to go and study in Yale or whatever? And there is clearly something going on, because there's the material reality of it, right? They have completely deindustrialized, and the only thing they produce is bullshit. Like, even, they put their geniuses into finance, doing these derivative products, which are bullshit. Like, it's just making money out of talking shit, basically, in a very sophisticated mathematical way. But it's got nothing to do with anything that has any use value to anyone. It doesn't change anything. So if at the end of the day, all you can do with your bubbles of money is to buy shitty stuff, and it doesn't even work, because most people are living paycheck to paycheck, while the Gestapo is picking people off in the streets, you're not on the winning side. There is no way you are, right? So that's another answer. That's another level of answer to this defeatist stuff. It's over. Like, it's over economically. It's over militarily. Like, like effectively, Russia has been demilitarizing the whole of the West, while at the same time remilitarizing. And so have China. They have poured more bombs on Gaza than they did over the whole of Europe, I think, in Second World War. Like, I'm talking the West here. And still they couldn't
kill the resistance,
an army of 40,000 orphans. and they have the most powerful navy in the world, and they got their backsides handed to them by the poorest, not even
Poorest
country. It's not even a country officially.
Exactly.
The poorest nation in the world, known also as Yemen, and as they say, bullshit money. Well, it used to be what bullshit walks and money talks, but it's more like
money is
but
bullshit.
Anyway.
The US needs its wars to like have all this military spending, but since the use value is not interesting, it's just the exchange value, or like
Exactly.
we just want to spend on the military,
and so you can't
So we
you
have to
can't
have
even
this
use
spend.
you can't even use the fucking things on the battlefield effectively, because the whole military industrial complex is built on maximizing shareholder value, right?
Grift.
And so that's how now Iran says, well, it's good, we have one of those JDAMs unexploded, and there is so much unexploded ordnance in Gaza that they have enough explosives to
keep fighting for 10 more years. Yeah.
Guerrilla war for another 20 years.
Exactly.
But that's not the case with Russian weapons. Literally Russian weapons, if it doesn't work, you take a hammer to them, you bang it in 2 places, and it works again. Whereas if US weapon, then it's done in these very small boutique things. Nobody really understands it. It doesn't need to work. Well, it needs to work to make money for the shareholders, but that's very different from use value on the battlefield, which is, effectively. So this is lost. And then the moral superiority has been shot forever, in this 4K Holocaust. And the last one was the Epstein files. So, now even the comprador class in the global majority countries, number one, and large number of them have been shown to be part of this, nutty cabal of cod Satanists, because I don't even think they're really Satanists. I think they're just,
for the fun of it.
They're cosplaying.
Yeah, exactly.
And, this lady, she sold a piece of the
Kaaba.
I don't know the exact name, but my understanding is some sacred piece of cloth that covers the Black Rock or something, and Epstein would what?
Walk on it.
Rape people on it. Well, that's
okay,
the
sure.
best of times, right?
Yeah.
I leave it to the listener's imagination what he might have done on this. And so even the comprador class is losing any form of legitimacy, because you're just, you're a servant to these guys. How can you? So I think the whole thing is on the verge of collapse, and that's another reason why we should not be defeatist. And unfortunately, many of our friends in the anti-imperialist alternative media sphere are, going all Chicken Little about what's going on. They never face any consequences. It's a psyop to make us accept the worst of everything. One day those bubbles burst, and we're living in the biggest bubble of everything. The psychological bubble, it's a material bubble, it's a financial bubble, it's a moral bubble. And you can't, inflate your way out of everything forever.
Yeah, and if it's, exactly, that's like, it may seem like nothing of consequences happening to all these revelations, but if nothing, the undercurrent that is building, it's gonna be another flood. That's inescapable.
Yeah. Did you see that image of somebody in Iran? Some group made this very big statue of Baal.
Yeah, and they burnt it.
And they burnt it.
Yeah.
That is genius. That is genius psychological warfare, because all those, stupid conspiracists, alt-right imbeciles in the US will share this picture among themselves, right? In their stupidly anti-Semitic or whatever white supremacist way. But it will do something, if you know what I'm saying. We'll go, look,
this is actually what is happening.
There's a country in the world where people are actually burning this in effigy.
Yeah.
They can't be entirely wrong, right? They can't be entirely bad if they're doing this on the celebration of their revolution. When is our revolution,
Exactly.
coming?
So
I saw this.
go ahead.
Sorry, Mehmet. I saw the clip from Venezuela.
Mhm.
Like they're talking about selling this oil. We are ready to cooperate with the United States, and it felt like a psyop. Again, they're fucking with the United States. It's like, what are they gonna do now? They're so cooperative, and it's. I don't read it at all like, oh, they're giving everything up. They're just biding time and fucking with them. And
but it's literally Trump agreeing to what Maduro was offering, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, like this is the MO of this guy. Like he did the same with China. He slapped tariffs on them. They said, okay, fine, we'll slap tariffs on you. And by the way, forget about those rare earth that you need for your arms industry. And then he took the tariffs down and they said, okay, so we'll bring them back down. And then he goes, what a massive victory. And now he's hoping
nothing has changed.
Nothing has changed. He's hoping to do the same with Iran, to go back to the terms of the JCPOA, but the real terms in which Iran this time will get sanctions relief, which it never got the first time around because Obama was another one of those, genocidal goals. And he will go, yeah. The very deal he turned down. The whole thing is complete nonsense, and I very much doubt, his base is dwindling. So at the end of the day, you're really kind of, towards the end of the Wizard of Oz. Like the curtain is being pulled, the dog is barking and pulling the curtain. And it will be revealed there is this really silly old man pulling levers at the back. And someone will come to him and say, Dorothy will come to him and say, you are a very bad man. And he will respond, no, not at all. I'm just a very bad wizard.
I mean, I agree, but at the same time, I'll quote you to yourself. It's
oh my God.
this psychopathic frog has nuclear weapons. So unfortunately, so that's where we are at, and that is what I'm scared of. I mean, not scared in the like that is what I worry that this whole thing with Iran will end up in, because they don't have anything else left to do actual damage to Iran. And I'm not saying this to scare people or anything like that, but it's like we should be aware of the situation.
Yeah. Okay. And I am acutely aware of it. I think I started regaining hope in 2017 when I read Andrei Martyanov's first book. It's called Losing Military Supremacy. And I suddenly realized that they had actually lost military supremacy, right? And then Martyanov, who's an interesting character, you don't have to agree with everything he says, and it's curmudgeon, I think they call him, makes this point where he's not the only one, but I got it from him first, so I want to give credit, that the US Army is extremely, is on a hair trigger nuclear. It hasn't got very much to escalate with before it gets to the nuclear option, right? And that is actually the central question. And when people go after China or Iran or whoever for strategic patience, for trying to bring this thing down peacefully, they forget this, right? So like if China was to send, I don't know, international brigades to Gaza or what have you, it would run that risk, right? And the same way that Russia has been extremely careful, absorbing so many provocations. And there's a part of me that goes, when are you going to hit back, right? Because, of course, we've had enough of this. But the other part of me goes, okay, if you hit those guys back, they have nothing left other than nuclear weapons. And they have the emotional intelligence of a spoiled 5-year-old, right? Raised to be a narcissist. And So the whole question of the adults in the room is, how do we bring them down without them throwing their toys out of their pram, right? Their nuclear toys out of the pram. And that's a very difficult question. And I think there, Sun Tzu is probably the guy to look to. Wow. Literally,
always leave a way out.
Always leave a way out. And also the supreme art of war is to win the war you don't have to fight.
Yeah, exactly.
And what the Chinese are doing with the rare earth is very, very subtle in that respect, right? Because basically, it's not the minerals that count. It's having the industrial capacity on a scale such that these things, which are the byproduct of, great industries, great metallurgic industries in particular, and a very small byproduct, that you can get enough of them. And you can go to all the mines of those things anywhere in the world and mine them. When you've deindustrialized, you're still not able to produce them. So, and if you don't produce them, you can't do all those fancy high-tech weapons anymore. And, you keep on spending your ordnance in Ukraine, in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Syria, and maybe next in Iran, right? And you can't replenish it. So, and when that happens, if I were the Chinese, I would give them a way out. I would go, okay, zero sum has run its course. How about some win-win for everybody, right? And bring the fucker down until from the inside, we break the shell and it's a birth. And I think that's what the Chinese got that the Soviets didn't get, maybe because of some Orientalist supremacism, or maybe because they didn't have a way to actually hug. Maybe the dialectics of the Sino-Soviet split gave the Chinese a chance to hug their enemy very closely as the US was trying to bring down the Soviets. Maybe if it had been just the Chinese, even with their Sun Tzu, they couldn't have done it, because the Americans would never have let themselves be hugged so closely.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, now they have been hugged so close that the emperor literally has no clothes. Like, all the clothes are made in China, all the suspenders are made in China, all the roller skates are made in China, everything is made in China. And the Chinese are not even saying, no, you can't have them. They're saying, oh, you have to fill in this paper and wait for the bureaucracy to. And for the past 2 years, apparently, it's still been considered. So they do this great thing where they don't go, no. They just, slow things down. It's been the same in the entity, right? Apparently, for the past 2 years, the Chinese have stopped investing, but they told nobody. So, people on the left go, yeah, the Chinese are still investing in the occupied West Bank. They are actually Zionists. They are part of the New World Order, of the blah, blah, blah. They're all occupied by the Zionists and all that nonsense that we hear from some of our friends on the left. But in fact, it turned out, because settlers took them to court, that they stopped investing in the entity, citing security concerns. And and I think it's a brilliant way to go about it, because, if you don't have overwhelming force, you can't bring a narcissist down.
No.
And the problem is overwhelming force when they are so, I forget the technical term, but nuclear sensitive, is probably not the right idea. I know it's infuriating, because it means it will take longer. It means, many people will die who wouldn't need to die. But, if we look at the Third Reich, it was when it was collapsing that it killed the most.
Yeah.
And it looks to be the same for the Fourth Reich.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it's been an hour and a half. I think we should start rounding off it a bit. It's been great so far, and I'm sure it will be great in the end as well. I would like to turn us back to Basil Al-Araj, martyr. So he says at the end of his 8 rules, the 8th rule is finally, every Palestinian is on the front lines of the battle for Palestine. So be careful not to fall in your duty. And a footnote on Palestinian there, his own footnote, I think, is Palestinian in the broad sense, meaning anyone who sees Palestine as a part of their struggle, regardless of their secondary identities. So, having that in mind, what do you think is our duty? Because the analysis you've provided is brilliant. It's like I don't have anything to add there, but this is not the fall of the empire is not a deterministic thing. Like we have to do it. We have to take it down.
We have to make the apple fall.
Yeah, exactly. So, what do you think people should focus on? Where should our energy be focused on in general, especially for us as you call the Westoids?
Yeah, it's not a deterministic thing, and that also is something that some versions of Marxism kind of projected, that it's all going to be determined. The march of history is predetermined, it's linear, and all this, of course, is not not reasonable to hold. It's not a deterministic thing, and it's not a spectator sport, right? Those two things are very important, because some of our friends on the left tend to look at these things like a spectator sport, and we are the supporters of the team that always loses kind of thing, right? And so we spend the whole game shitting on our team because that's the folklore, that's what we do. We know they'll always lose. For some reason, we don't, because we were born in a family of supporters of that team or whatever, or because we love, nobody loves defeat and losers as much as the Western left. That's why they kind of love Cuba, because for the past 66 years, to their eyes, it looks on the verge of collapse, of losing. So we can, but of course they love Che Guevara, who lost his life much more than they love Fidel Castro, who had the impoliteness of actually living to the end of his life and leading his country until pretty much almost his last breath, right? And that is now, but so it's not a spectator sport, I think, is the first one. And again, everything that we produce goes to feed a system of meaning, right? And basically there are two types of system of meaning. I did a little article with a very simple matrix. On one side, everything that we say, think, do, but especially what we put out in the world, because it has an impact on others, can have two kind of broad effects. It can either nourish the spirit of resistance, i.e. the idea that an alternative is possible, that there is a way to put a stop to this and to live a more sane life that takes care of the whole of life, not just humans. Like, we don't want to replace white supremacy by human supremacy, because we need to live, take care of what Ali Kadri calls social nature, which is the equilibrium between all that is alive. Every piece of life depends on some kind of an equilibrium interaction, dialectical interaction with everything else that is alive, and we're able to take care of it, right? And so either what you put out there nourishes this, or it weakens it, right? So that's one side of the matrix. Or what you put out there inflates the empire's ego, because it's just a game of projection. They don't even have the material means, right? So it's all in our minds, in your minds, in their minds. So either it inflates their ego or it weakens it. And so if we do nothing else, we are anyway part of the psychological war the minute we start speaking to someone else, more or less. And especially when we speak about politics, international relations, it would be one of the things we can all do is, before we put things out, is maybe stop 2 seconds and 5 minutes, if that's the time we need to go, okay, so I'm putting this out in the world. From what I know, is it more likely to nourish the spirit of resistance or to weaken it? Is it more likely to inflate the empire's ego? Wow, they are so smart. They can corrupt everybody. They can get everybody to betray everybody. They have weapons, like Trump says, that nobody's ever heard of, that make people stop fighting like this and just tremble and say, please, please, Donald, not me. Or does it deflate their ego, right? And so that is already one of the things we can start doing to really play our part, to be on the side of Palestine, to be Palestinian. And I think Basil there is very on point, because if we look at the world, the sharp edge of that genocidal machine today is in Palestine. I mean, before it was on Turtle Island, and it's still very sharp and it's still genocidal on Turtle Island. But today it is in Palestine. So if you see this, we are all Palestinian in that sense, right? And the other thing is, how are we able to produce stuff that nourishes the spirit of resistance? Well, what we put out depends on what we let in, right? Like if we let in garbage in, you know what? We're going to put garbage out. So it's very important as we consume content, especially anti-imperialist, so-called left or, critical content, that we pay close attention to what it does in here to our own spirit of resistance. Does it nourish it or does it weaken it? If it weakens it, if after watching the podcast, you're like, oh my God, that's it. It's over, like my son says, it's over. Then maybe you can unsubscribe from that particular channel and look elsewhere for people who inspire you. And again, I'm not saying if you're producing content, I'm not saying, bullshit your way out of it. I'm a part of the Cabral side of the equation. Tell no lies, claim no easy victory. But if you don't know, if you haven't had any information from official resistance channels, why don't you shut up?
Exactly.
Do you have to comment about supposed Venezuela sending oil tankers to the Zionist entity? You can wait a couple of days. You can do something else. If it's so much on your mind that you can't comment, first stop watching any video that says, that's it, how the empire controls Venezuela or whatever, how the Zionists have come to occupy the mind of Delcy Rodriguez and and Cabello. And yeah, so that would be the way we can contribute to this.
I think people
essential struggle for a future for the whole of humanity.
I think people as well forget how easy it is to sort of destroy things than build things. Like it's very easy to, so like when you put out something negative or like speculative about Venezuela in this way, you are actually really damaging Venezuela and the struggle. While it is much more difficult to actually support Venezuela from behind the computer or from behind the phone, but it is very easy to actually be very destructive. So if nothing, as you say, just shut the fuck up. Like if you don't have anything good to say, if you don't have anything reasonable to say, that is, as you say, resistance positive, like just shut the fuck up, because like what you're saying is most of the time irrelevant. I mean, it is like you're not putting anything positive out there. You're not helping at all.
Yeah.
Just be aware of the fact that you might be very, very damaging. Don't do it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, on the other end of the coin, like the whole concept of self-worth that you've talked about a lot now, which is great, fantastic, is also because there are a lot of people around me as well, especially like the well-meaning, passive people that don't have the self-worth, and then they go, I mean, who am I to say something? Who am I to do something? Like, that's not, I think the self-worth there should sort of push people. If they cultivate it, it will push them to action as well, and that's necessary.
And and we get them to cultivate it in a strange way. And there I go back to my clinical practice, not by telling them, not by lecturing them, not by pushing them, not by forcing them, but by holding space for them, that you can actually do it, that you can actually operate from inside that other system of meaning, that it is there for the taking if they want to. And meanwhile, we are able to understand where they're coming from their own perspective, because I believe everybody's rational, in some sense. It makes sense to them given their circumstances, the way they look at things, how they've been socialized into a particular system of meaning, to live in that way, and to have someone from the outside lecturing them serves no purpose. Like, I see somebody in an abusive relationship, if as a therapist, I tell them, you're in an abusive relationship, get the hell out of there. Not only will it not work, but it will actually make them stay longer than if I just try to see it from their perspective, while at the same time holding, living in a space, in a mental space in which it can be different. It doesn't have to be that way. The free people of the world do exist, and they want nothing more than welcome you as one of them. So that's that kind of thing. And for those who want to be destructive, that's also okay. There's plenty of targets, go after Chomsky. If you need to be destructive, you won't do any damage to anybody by doing that. And you might even serve the revolution if you're effective in your blows against that lifelong psychological operation on behalf of genocidal empire.
Just don't be destructive against the resistance, please. That's
exactly.
It's not a big ask though. So
thanks, Benji. It's a lot of good food for thought. I really appreciate having awareness of what inspires you, and trying to find that in yourself and take that in and take that into your worldview.
Well, thanks very much for having me, guys. It was a great conversation. One day we'll invite you to talk about what is the point of doing what we're doing. Anti-imperialist podcasting, right?
Yeah.
I believe there's a lot of point, but it's, I love to discuss it with other people who do it. So that might be our next conversation together.
It would be interesting. I don't know if it's going to be depressing, but it would be interesting. No,
Look,
you
guys are still on YouTube. The world is your oyster.
Well, I actually have one final question to you. Do you, and I'm not, I mean, it's not a joke. I'm seriously asking, do you do online therapies? Because this question of self-worth I've seen it in a lot of people, especially in Sweden. I've been living here for 17 years. I mean, it's prevalent. It's everywhere. Because I think one side of it is that it's a deeply non-religious country where because religion gives you can give you some sort of self-worth and meaning. And when you don't have that, and you're now it's before, maybe it was this more social democracy and people had more communal worth, but that's also eroded. People have serious life crises here.
Oh yeah, but yeah. So to answer the question, yes, I do online therapy. I do much less of it than I used to do because my partner is poorly, and I try to do as little as I can on that front, and also I want to do more writing. But Sweden, Sweden is one of the original gangsters of white supremacy, right? The whole country has been a white supremacist hellhole until after Second World War. They all turned around and all became social democratic, whereas a few years earlier, social democracy was actually voting credits for bullshit race science and all the rest of it. So it's
Yep.
one of so the system of meaning is supremacist from the get-go, and then after the Second World War is like, oh, we are still supreme because we are the most social democratic country in the world. And then just to be a little bit like Americans, we also got the CIA to kill our prime minister and then didn't look into it afterwards. And and the country is a little bit fucked up in the head. You don't say. That's incredible. But it can't be. Bernie Sanders told me it was heaven on earth. You guys just don't know how happy you are, and that's why you are complaining for no reason.
With the humanitarian superpower of the world.
Yes, you are the moral. You are. I mean, white supremacist morality is white anyway. So you're the whitest of all whites in terms of moral supremacy. And the fact that the fascist parties and the racist parties are growing in strength in your country is just a minor blip due to some statistical.
I was
outlier.
thinking about when you're talking about China, but Sweden is the country in the world who hates China the most,
and Russia as well.
Well, they are not white enough. Like, let's face it. At the end of the day,
but you can say you don't have to be like the Nazi to say shit about China. You can say practically anything about China, and it will go in any social context. And so that's also a difference, because the kids today, they don't have that. But like from the boomers to my generation, they hate China.
I mean, I have
in every way sense of the word.
I have this colleague, and she won't watch this, so it's fine. I mean, she's a well-meaning.
That's what you think.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's a well-meaning person. Like, it's not a bad person. But like, we had this, and I'm in IT. We had this conversation about AI a while ago, and I'm like using DeepSeek. She's like, "Oh, but it's Chinese. I mean, you're using ChatGPT. Like, do you want your data to go to the US, like Sam Altman? I'd rather. I mean, whatever you think of China, I'd rather it goes to China. Whatever they do with it. I mean, it's if the alternative is that it goes to OpenAI, like, fuck that shit." She was like, "What? How can you say that?" Like, China is better than the US. Like, there's no, it's not even a competition. Anyways, I think your pitch was perfect for not getting any therapy customers from Sweden. So, so I think you nailed it there.
No, I love Sweden. I love the Swedish people. I gave, I don't know how many training workshops for Swedish people. I love you all. I love everybody in the world. You all have a place in the free people of the world, for sure. Even the French have a place.
Yeah,
I'm French, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Benji.
We have something to work on, but
yeah.
Thank you, guys. That was fun.
Thank you.
See you in a freer world, hopefully.
Yeah. It gets freer every day. That's
it is true.
What we need to see.
It's a process, and people are fighting for it. So
every morning you wake up, you're one day closer to the liberation of Palestine and the fall of the empire.
Inshallah.
We must always remember that.
Yeah, inshallah. Thank you.
Inshallah, indeed.